The hounds bounded up the stairs, paws pounding from room to room. Suddenly, a dog gave out a cry. No one was ready for what came out of the chimney. Monday morning on March 28, 1876, and 7-year-old Emily Agnes Holland pulled the wooden door closed behind her and set off down Moss Street, where she lived, at 110 in Blackburn. Emily walked down the dirt-cobbled road on the way to school. It had been raining all night, so the ground was still soft and slightly muddy. Emily squelched her shoes and twisted them as if she was putting out a cigarette, leaving marks on the ground as she walked. She walked a few more paces and turned around to see the patterns that she had made. She was smiling to herself. Then she stopped. She began to frown. A man was walking over to her. He waved, so she waved back, although she wasn't certain that she didn't know him. She heard him get closer as his shoes made a funny sound. The man took little Emily's hand, and they walked off down the lane and out of view of the houses. A short while later, the children were lining up to enter St. Albans School, and young Emily was quietly telling her friends about this nice man she had met on her walk to school. And later on, she was going to go home and run an errand for her new friend. The teacher told the children to put their things back in their desks and run along home. Emily told her friends that she would see them out on the fields later. When she got home, her father was there, Mr. James Holland. She hugged her father and told him bits and pieces of her day, and said would it be okay to go out and play with her friends on the field. James said that would be fine, but she had to be back for her supper. She agreed, and Emily went to play. James looked out of the window. It was getting late. He saw some of the children passing the house. He ran out to catch them. "Hey, is our Emily with you?" "No, we haven't seen her for hours," a small girl replied. "She went off to do an errand for a new friend." "New friend?" James asked, taken back. "Who?" "We don't know." "Do you know what they look like?" James asked, starting to worry. The children glanced at each other, sensing things were not okay. "No, we haven't met him," said a boy who was slightly older than Emily, but he lived on the same lane. "I'm going to the police. Please, please, can you look for Emily?" The children said that they would, and some even knocked on doors to get others to help search. The police and locals came out in force, and Blackburn was thoroughly searched. When the police questioned the children about Emily's new friend, all the children were unsure about who he was and what he looked like, but a little girl called Mary Ellen Eccles said that she last saw Emily clutching a few coins in her hand and a note for the shopkeeper, and that Emily had told her that she was going to buy half an ounce of tobacco for the nice man she had recently met. The search continued, but nothing was found of Emily, and she was now missing. On the morning of the 30th of March, Mrs. Alice White was cutting across a field when she stopped. She noticed a dog sniffing a parcel on the ground. It looked deeply interested in what was inside. Alice walked closer, and the dog ran away, but stayed close enough to keep an eye on the parcel. Alice noticed the parcel was wrapped in newspaper and tied with string. She hesitated for a moment before bending down to slowly untie the string. The parcel was a little heavy, as she tried to move it around to unwrap the paper. As she pulled at the last bits of paper, the contents of the parcel came rolling out, and with that, Alice fell back onto the ground and screamed. The police rushed to the scene to see if any more parcels had been left, or there was at least a clue that had been left nearby, but there was nothing. Then suddenly, Word got to the police that there was a man in a nearby lane acting suspiciously, and the officers raced to the location. But things were not as they were expecting. The police located the suspicious man, a Mr. Richard Fairclough. But the reason this man was acting so strange was because he had just discovered and unwrapped 2 more newspaper parcels. The police understood at once Richard's odd behaviour. The parcels were collected and sent back to the police surgeon, Dr. William Maitland. Laid out on the table in the mortuary was 2 legs and a torso of a young girl. He found evidence that she had been violated before being murdered, and then cut to pieces with a very sharp blade. Something that intrigued the surgeon was the newspapers. They were old copies of the Preston Herald, but the strange thing was that they were covered in hair of all different colours, textures and lengths. Dr. Maitland walked over to his desk and made a note. Who would have access to all this hair from so many people? Was the murderer a barber? He underlined the word barber and walked out of the room to find the chief constable. On the 31st of March, an inquest into the remains of the child was opened before Coroner Mr. Hargreaves at Blackburn Town Hall, where the police were out in force, as the murder and the mutilation of an innocent little girl had outraged the people of Blackburn, and the large crowd gathering outside was close to rioting. Inside, the parents of the murdered girl, James and Elizabeth Holland, confirmed the remains were that of their little daughter Emily, due to a mark on the little girl's back. And again, Mary Ellen Eccles, the little girl, was questioned, and again she told the room how Emily was going to buy tobacco for a man that she had just met on the street. But this time, young Mary gave a description of the man. He wore a billycock hat, a yellow waistcoat, mixture cloth coat, dirty fustian trousers, and wooden clogs. At this, the chief constable, Mr. Potts, was now certain that this was the work of a tramp, and that all the tramps in the area were to be brought to justice. They would certainly find the killer. But with this, the coroner, Mr. Hargreaves, rose to his feet. "I must object, sir, as tramps do not often carry bundles of newspapers around with them." The chief constable scoffed and told the inquest 3 tramps had already been arrested, and it would just be a matter of time. And with that, the inquest was adjourned for a week. During the week, 2 witnesses came forward, 2 little girls, aged 8 and 9 years of age. Both gave vague descriptions of a scruffy-looking man who the police again assumed to be a tramp, and went out and arrested a homeless man who loosely matched the description, a man named Charles Taylor, who had been begging on Moss Street. And with this, the police began proudly boasting that they had the suspects in custody. But people were not so easily convinced. But to please the crowd and Dr. Maitland, the police took interest in the local barbers and began to search their place of work. One morning, the police entered a quiet barber shop, number 3 Moss Street. The barber looked shocked to see the police, but was still quiet and polite. The police were just about to leave when the keen eyes of one officer saw something at the back of the shop. He motioned to another officer, and together they walked to the corner of the room. There, on the floor, was a pile of old Preston Herald newspapers. The police had questions for the 25-year-old barber, Mr. William Fish, a man of low repute and who had spent his youth in the workhouse. He admitted 2 previous convictions of larceny, but denied murdering the small girl. With no evidence, the police did not charge Mr. Fish and left the shop. But locals gathered around the door heard everything. Word spread of Mr. Fish's barber shop, and business boomed, since so many people came to see him out of curiosity. And the barber discovered he loved the attention and began singing to his customers. But he would find not all clients were happy to see him. As he sang to one customer, "Tomorrow will be Friday, and we've caught no fish today," a group of children outside the shop shouted, "Barber, Barber, who killed the little girl? And Emily, Emily, who murdered little Emily?" A woman walked past the children and stood in the doorway of the barber shop. The barber turned to her with a smile and asked, "What is it you'd like today?" And the woman, with an unblinking glare, said coldly, "To see a killer." She then turned and left. This carried on, and in the end, Mr. Fish had to ask for police protection against the angry locals that were now harassing him. And on the 7th of April, the inquest resumed. Charles Taylor and a number of other tramps had been released due to lack of evidence. The tobacconist Frederick Cox confirmed that a young girl had come in and bought half an ounce of tobacco. And many other schoolgirls came forward to describe what the man looked like. But none of them could describe him properly. And with nothing to go on, the inquest was postponed again.
Yeah.
Weeks went by, and more tramps were arrested and released, and newspapers began to ridicule the police, questioning if the little girl's killer would ever be brought to justice. But, as the police investigation floundered, someone suggested getting a dog trainer involved. A man named Peter Taylor, who lived at 72 Nelson Street in Preston. Peter and his two dogs, half-breed Blood Hound Morgan and a Clumber Spaniel, set out to look for the missing body parts of the little girl. But before the dogs were set to work in earnest, a young police officer suggested, "Why don't we set the dogs loose at the barber shops in Moss Street?" In the first shop, the dogs were very uninterested, and nothing incriminated was found. But as soon as the dogs were led through the door of number 3 Moss Street, Mr. Fish's barber shop, Morgan let out a cry and charged off towards the back of the shop, with the spaniel and the officers following behind. When they caught up with Morgan, he was scenting and pawing at the wooden door leading to the bottom of the stairs, and as soon as the door was opened just a crack, Morgan forced his way through and again led the charge. He first took interest in a pile of clothes in the back room, but then, with another howl, Morgan was off, racing to the front room, sniffing at the fireplace, standing on his back legs, forcing his head up the chimney. "There's something here!" cried Mr. Taylor, as he tried to pull the excited Morgan away from the fireplace. A constable walked over to the fireplace, and kneeling on one knee, stretched his left arm up the chimney as far as it would go. His fingers felt something soft. A bundle of fabric. The officer managed to get a grip and pull it down. Now, lay across the floor in front of the fireplace was a bundle of Emily's clothes, with her burnt skull and arms wrapped up inside the clothes. Mr. Fish initially denied any involvement, but there was no help for him now, and the 25-year-old married father of 2 was arrested and taken for questioning. In his cell, Mr. Fish made a full confession to abducting and sexually assaulting and murdering young Emily in the back room above the barber shop. He used the barber's razor to cut her throat and then to dismember the body. He even claimed that the razor he used to kill the girl is the same razor he had been using up until the day of his arrest to shave people. On the 14th of August 1876, the Demon Barber of Blackburn, Mr. William Fish, stood trial at Lancaster Assizes. And there, There was no pity or sympathy for Mr. Fish, and he was rapidly found guilty and sentenced to hang at Kirkdale Prison in Liverpool. As the noose was placed round his neck, his final words were, "I wish to tell you while I have a chance, to lead a new life. You can see my bad end through breaking off with Sunday school, and through bad companions. Those were happy days when I attended Sunday school. After I neglected it, I went from bad to worse, and so I have been brought to this sad end. If I had my time again, I would lead a different life. It is not too late for you to mend. Avoid those bad cheap journals on which I wasted so much spare time. May we meet again in heaven through God's mercy." Well, that'll be all for that story. I know it was a bit dark, but I did enjoy finding out about Morgan, as this case is the earliest instance in Britain that dogs were instrumental to solving a murder case. And Morgan's success made him famous and launched him into the world of crime fighting. He was even employed by Scotland Yard. In his time, he was involved in other murder cases, catching poachers, where in one instance he tracked 2 men for 17 miles and caught them. He was also involved in a case to find an embalmed earl's kidnapped body. And in 1888, at the time of Jack the Ripper's killings, the newspapers talked of Morgan's great feats, and pressured for the use of bloodhounds in hunting Jack, as Morgan himself was no longer alive due to old age at the time of the Ripper. Sounds a wonderful dog. But I do think this is a sad story, and one that will have rocked the community for a long, long time. And I do think at the end the barber did have some remorse, as his final words seemed to be a warning to other would-be murderers. But please, let me know in the comments below your thoughts on this story, and if there are any stories you'd like me to cover. As always, thank you for your support, and take care.